YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Right, a bit of an in the news edition today, with a bit of interplanetary I spied thrown in as well. Now, to start off with, just thought I'd let you know, if you haven't noticed already, my Mars handgun video is all over the press at the moment. It's in the Inquisitor, it's in the Daily Express, the Metro, and full time it will probably be in the Daily Mail and the Huffington Post also, hopefully in the next couple of days. So that's probably going to up everybody's views when it comes to Mars anomalies, hopefully. So that's all good. So watch this space on that one. Now, I was doing a little bit of research late last night, early this morning, and there was, back in November, a guy, where is he? Here we go. There was a guy called John Brandenburg who said that he thinks that there was a nuclear explosion or two on Mars. These stories ran back in November last year and were made quite a big splash across the world, actually, and much to the annoyance of mainstream scientists and people who, in fact, if you look at some of the comments at the bottom of the page, you'll see lots of arguments on some of these. Sorry, I won't move around too much. You'll see lots of people arguing with him about it directly on Facebook and stuff like that, especially on this one. And his basic argument is that he's looked at the levels of various elements in the Mars atmosphere and on the ground, and has come to the conclusion that there was a nuclear war on Mars, which may well have been the case. I don't see why there shouldn't have been. The evidence on the ground, as far as I've seen, actually supports this theory, and I'm not a mainstream scientist. I'm an artist. I've spent most of my adult life as a portrait artist, in fact, amongst other things, as well as being a musician. And unfortunately, Brandenburg, here he is here. I won't play this video because I'm not really allowed to. Unfortunately, he's basing some of his findings on the Mars face, which we all know is a little bit dubious. Now, I don't actually think it is dubious. I think it may well be a face. But mainstream science absolutely refused to go with this face on Mars for some reason. But they probably don't realise that, in fact, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of structures around the face, like a buried city or buildings. There's hundreds and hundreds of structures in this area, which have largely been blurred out and obfuscated by NASA. So the face is actually a bit of a distraction, and there are, in fact, possibly one or two large things like pyramids here. They do look a bit dilapidated and may or may not be, but there are other structures in these images if you look closely and enhance them and muck around with them. And of course, the problem is basing theories around this when it's been so ridiculed by the mainstream scientific fraternity is bound to get you not very far. The best thing to do is to use new evidence, which is basically not being so lambasted by the mainstream. So there we go. I thought this was in International Business Times. I've had a few things published in this thing before. You can check it out. It's nuclear war killed all life on Mars, and yet there was totally aliens on the red planet. So they're kind of taking the piss a little bit about against Brandenburg here, and I actually think he's not far off the mark. But using the face on Mars as some kind of reference is not really going to help your cause too much. So I won't labour the point about that too much. Let's crack on. I've got a lot. Here's another one in the Mirror. This is also from November last year. Aliens will destroy Earth in nuclear attack because we're too noisy, claims physicist. Right, okay. Typical Mirror over-the-top headline. But some of us journalists do sometimes need to use over-the-top headlines just to get people's attention. And if it gets people interested in Mars and gets them interested in astronomy, that's good. It's all good. The more people we have looking at Mars, the better. So now I won't go on about this story too much. It just shows the possible explosion on Mars. Doesn't show any actual pictures of Martian finds that we've got hundreds and hundreds of, although there is the mystery ball on Mars here. Okay, yeah. So, but this is obviously a couple of months back now, so it's worth checking out some of these stories if you haven't already. I think one or two other people may have covered them, but the main thing I was actually interested in was this came up. I had a Google alert for a story about a bright flash on Mars in August 1941. Now, could this be anything to do with a nuclear war on Mars? Now, there's a guy here, and this guy was, I think, died in 1997, and he was an absolute genius of an astronomer, this guy, Clyde Tombaugh, discoverer of many planetary bodies, including Pluto in about 1930, I think, and many asteroids and all sorts of stars and clusters and red dwarfs and you name it. This guy found a lot of it, in fact named a lot of it, and a lot of the stuff out there is named after this guy. This guy was an amateur astronomer initially. He built his own telescope and eventually became part of the establishment. You can check this out yourself. This is on beforeitsnews.com, so you can go on here and you can just type in Clyde Tombaugh, it's spelled with a B-A-U-G-H on the end. I think that's how you pronounce it. And this guy was a genius, but the thing that caught my eye, which came up in my Google alerts about this, was in 1949. Sorry, let's enlarge this a bit before I start reading out stuff. Can I enlarge it from here? No, I won't. It'll probably cock it up. In 1949, Tombaugh had also told the Naval Missile Director at White Sands Missile Range, Commander Robert McLaughlin, that he had seen a bright flash on Mars in August 1941, which he now attributed to an atomic blast mentioned May 12, 1949, in a letter from McLaughlin to Dr. James Van Allen. Now, Dr. James Van Allen was the guy who named Van Allen's belt. So these are top people here. Tombaugh also noted that the first atomic bomb tested in New Mexico would have lit up the dark side of the Earth like a neon sign, and that Mars was coincidentally quite close at the time. The implication apparently being that the atomic test would have been visible from Mars. So conversely, what he's actually saying there is that he may have witnessed a nuclear explosion on Mars because he saw it in his telescope, and the Martians may well have seen nuclear tests on Earth when we were testing them in the early 1940s, during World War II. This may go somewhere, and this guy was a ufologist as well. He did a lot of work on UFOs, and came to the conclusion that they must have been intelligently designed, at least some of them, because of the way they moved through the sky and defied the laws of physics. So he was a very interesting man and well worth looking up. There's also this is, I think, largely from Wikipedia. Here's the Wikipedia page. Here he is as a young man with his homemade telescope. And he started over 100. You know, he was born over 100 years ago, in 1906. And here's, have I highlighted that bit of text? There we go. It's the same bit of text there. So they got it straight from Wikipedia here. But basically, what this guy is saying is that he saw a very bright flash on Mars in 1941, and it's gone largely unreported until now. For some reason, this has just come up, and this kind of tallies with what John Brandenburg is saying about Mars, and there having been a huge war or a nuclear attack on Mars that may well have completely wiped them out, or largely wiped out any life on Mars. But of course, the mainstream science still refuses to believe, and there's no evidence for this whatsoever. I don't know where this idea comes from. They still completely refuse to even entertain the idea that any other of the planets in our own solar system may have been inhabited, or may even be inhabited now. Now, this view is actually down to prejudice and not down to any research. This is just a prejudicial view that is permeated through mainstream astronomy and science for hundreds and hundreds of years. And every scientist who's ever said anything about Mars and said and given evidence of intelligent structures on Mars and possible life in the distant past on Mars, and lakes on Mars, and water on Mars, they've been completely ridiculed by the established scientific fraternity. And why is this? Why is this? And this, I find the most annoying thing about mainstream science, is that even though NASA's own images, in my opinion and many people's opinion, show beyond reasonable doubt that there was a past civilization on Mars, they simply refuse to look at the evidence. So are these actually scientists we're dealing with here, or are they some sort of quasi-religious cult who don't want anyone else to get involved in their dealings? Because that's exactly how they're acting. They are acting like a quasi-religious cult who are refusing normal people and amateurs like myself and hundreds of other Mars anomaly researchers. They're absolutely refusing to look at the evidence in a logical and unbiased and unxenophobic manner. Now, why are these people so xenophobic? Is it just people on Earth that are xenophobic? I think it is actually a general problem with the populace of Earth. Mars is too close. They don't like the idea of there being little people up there when it's only at the closest around 34 million miles away, when it's in opposition. So I really do think this is actually a xenophobic fear of aliens or Martians or whatever you want to call them. And Mars, and especially the moon, our own moon, is way too close for comfort for these people. And they would much rather talk about Mars or life on planets being billions and billions of miles away, far too far away for them to travel to Earth. Oh, how convenient. Even though Mars is in the Goldilocks zone. Now, I mean, here's one of my recent videos here. Now, one or two people have said it's pareidolia. Actually, pareidolia does not exist. It's a non-existent word. It was made up by some guy in 1993, I think was writing for the Skeptical Inquirer, and is actually not a registered scientific term at all. It's completely made up. Now, this looks like a carved statue head, and there are many other similar things I've found, and lots of other people have found them. Some of them may not be, but I think on the whole, the ones that I've found at least they look pretty genuine. Now, I have spent my entire adult life as a portrait artist, and I do know about facial proportions, and these are pretty much smack on for a humanoid type face. The head itself is quite narrow, but some of it may have broken off the back here. It looks like he's got some sort of headdress on or something. Now, but the facial proportions are very specific indeed, and follow certain mathematical principles which were actually laid down by people like Leonardo da Vinci, another great genius from Earth. Now, there are certain ways you divide the face up. You draw a line across the eyebrows, and the certain proportions are correct. Now, this is obviously damaged if it is a humanoid carving of a humanoid face. The nose looks to be a bit broken off here, but the mouth looks fairly convincing, and the chin looks fairly convincing. The eyes look damaged also. These may well have had semi-precious stones embedded in them, like the Moai of Easter Island. They had sort of big eyes kind of stuck on. Most of them have fallen off there, of course. But many of these statues that we're looking at on Mars and carved artifacts are quite damaged and eroded and broken, smashed up like everything else. So, but these proportions are very specific, and there are rules laid down by Leonardo da Vinci and other great artists and masters about facial proportions, and the eyebrows always line up with the top of the ear. The bottom of the ear usually will line up with the the bottom of the nose, and there are certain, you could draw a line down the centre, and the left and right should be pretty symmetrical. This is not always the case, but usually, unless someone has facial disfigurement, both sides of the face are usually not exactly the same, but very, very similar. And these principles were worked out hundreds and hundreds of years ago on Earth by people such as Da Vinci. So there we go. And this is the one that's doing the rounds at the moment. This is the one that the papers have latched onto. I actually sent this to a news agency months and months ago, back in, I think, end of November, and they just sort of sat on it for months and didn't bother getting it published by the mainstream media. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll send them some more stuff, and they didn't publish that either. But I did have a lot of stuff published last year. The traffic light was the main one, and the cannon, which have been attributed as my find because I was the first to publish them. But everyone sort of jumped on the bandwagon there, and it was good. Everybody got loads more hits than they were normally getting because it really got things moving. So there we go, here's the gun. For some reason that's not playing. I think my graphics card's about to bomb out on me. So we'll leave that. Now, another thing that mainstream scientists and people that come onto my YouTube channel often say, oh, that there was once water on Mars, but there isn't now, and all this sort of thing. That's not even in, no, it's not going to play, okay. But there is water on Mars, and here is some. So the problem is a lot of established scientific people do, and mainstream people that go along with the established view do, is all they really do is actually spout dogma and theory. Now, it's all very well saying, oh, that all the water evaporated on Mars billions of years ago. Well, where's the evidence for that? That's just a theory. My videos are based on ground observation. They are not based on some theory written by some guy hundreds of years ago that is way out of date. And the thing is, you have to look at the current state of Mars, and you have to look at the surface of Mars, and you have to look at the evidence on the surface. There is a lot of evidence on the surface of Mars for a previous civilization. Let's go back to my video manager. And ignoring that is unscientific. And when you have things like this here, hopefully this will load up. I think my graphics card is struggling because I've got so much up here. I mean, at the moment, it might not actually come up. But yeah, the problem is that mainstream science simply refuse to look at the evidence. And why? Why are they doing this? I'm sure some of them are looking at the evidence. Now, either they are ignorant or they have an ulterior motive. And I don't think they're ignorant. I don't think they're stupid. These are not stupid people. So they must have an ulterior motive. Now, that ulterior motive is to protect their own jobs. And if they were to suddenly start saying, oh, there is life on Mars, then they'd probably get into trouble. They don't have the mandate to do that, and nor do NASA. NASA do not have the mandate to suddenly announce life on Mars. Here we go. Let's just go forward here, if it will let me. No, it's not going to let me. They do not have the mandate, so they are not allowed to suddenly walk out and have a big press conference and say, oh, by the way, we've been lying about Mars for the last 50, 60 years. Oh, and the moon. They don't have that mandate. It's not up to them. They are a military organisation. They are funded like a military organisation. They are run like a military organisation. And they are under the auspices of the White House. So it's up to people in the White House to make the decision to go public with any announcement. And I really don't think that's going to happen in the near future because they've got too much to lose, and it's a political hand grenade of a subject, and anyone involved in that will be either shot or ridiculed, or something bad's going to happen to them, and it's not going to be very pretty. So, and I would not like to be that person who was to stand up in front of everybody on TV and say, yes, there is life on Mars, because there are too many people with vested interests to keep things as they are, the current status quo. This is the electric fence, which is one of my recent finds. You may want to check this one out. I'll just pause it there. This is a raw image here on the left of Mars, and there's this thing sticking up, and on the right here is part of a temporary electric fence on Earth. That's got a bit of wire going through it there. You can see the similarities with a bit of twisted metal post there, and it's got an insulator there. So there you go. I mean, I won't go on too much longer because this has already probably run over, but this is just a general in the news sort of edition here, and I just thought I'd vent some of my sort of irritation at the mainstream, and how when anybody comes up with any sort of evidence for stuff on Mars and they go mainstream with it, they get ridiculed. And ridicule is done by people who are afraid. This is a technique by people who are denying or in denial of the fact that there is alien life out there, and of course there is. We're not the only living things in the universe. And what they are really afraid of is the fact that Mars is far too close for comfort. They would much rather it was billions of miles away, where they don't have to think about it, and it's not a threat. But unfortunately, Mars isn't that far away. Mars, in opposition, is quite close. And it is highly possible that that Clyde Tombaugh did see a massive explosion on the surface of Mars. Now, whether that was caused by a nuclear explosion, or a massive nuclear device, or it was a natural explosion, we don't know. But evidence is leaning towards it being a possible massive thermonuclear explosion on a scale much, much greater than anything that we've ever had or tried on Earth. A world destroying explosion. Now, obviously Mars is smaller, so it wouldn't have to be quite as big as you think, but it would still have to have been an enormous explosion to wipe out an Earth, a planet-sized atmosphere. There is some atmosphere left up there, but not a lot, and it was highly likely that it had a high oxygen atmosphere because of the red colour of Mars. This reddish colour, which they do exaggerate, of course, this reddish colour is caused by oxidation. It's caused by iron oxide, which can only happen in a high oxygen-rich atmosphere. So there must have been high levels of oxygen on Mars in the past. There is water on Mars now, but there was probably an awful lot more a long time ago. I mean, this is water. This crater here is called Chryse Planitia, or whatever, however you say that, I don't know. And there, all you got to do is look at my other videos. I've got lots of videos showing water, and there's drill water just below the surface of Gale Crater. There are all sorts of things that I've uncovered recently, and many other people have found similar things as well. So you've got to look at the evidence as a whole, and not just pick on one video and say, oh, I don't agree with this, don't agree with that, because yeah, a lot of this is speculation, but it's getting to the point now where it's not, in my case, it's getting to a point now where it's not all just speculation. There is so much evidence here that it has to be considered as some kind of proof. And when you have hundreds and hundreds of specimens, skulls and artifacts and carved objects and bits of pottery and carved glyphs and dead alien guys lying in the dirt and animal bones and strange objects and architecture and tools and implements and clothing and strange rods sticking up out of the ground. There's everything anything you can possibly imagine. And when you have this much of it in one place, it has to be considered as some kind of proof. Because what is proof? Proof is lots and lots of evidence. And that's exactly what I have. And that's exactly what a lot of people have now. Not just me. Okay, I think that I'll have to do. That's my rant over. I better finish this before the wife gets back from work. Thanks for watching, everybody. I may stick a couple of images on the end if it's not too long. another game of interplanetary I Spy gone slightly awry. I'll see you soon.